My name is Elena Marquez, and I learned the hard way that some families love what you do for them more than they love you. The call came at 6:00 a.m. My dad's name lit up my screen, and my stomach turned the way it always does when the phone becomes a leash. With him, it's never, "How are you?" It's a task wrapped as concern, a demand wearing a paper mask. I hesitated, then answered. He got right to the point. "Come to Seattle for the holidays. The whole family will be together. It would mean a lot." His voice was softer than usual, the kind of softness that arrives only when you're about to be volunteered for something you never agreed to. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I booked a flight out of Miami, dropped everything at work, bought gifts for the kids because I always over-prepare. I rented a car, even though he said not to bother. That's who I am, or who they trained me to be, the one who covers the gaps, the one who arrives with the solution already in hand. The snow hit me the second I stepped out of SeaTac. Wet, heavy, the kind that makes you regret every decision that led you to weather that feels like a punishment. The Uber ride to the old neighborhood felt longer than the flight. Same streets, same house, except it didn't feel like home. It felt like a structure I kept breathing life into. Mortgage, electricity, internet. My sister hadn't had a real job in a year. My parents swore their pension was stretched thin by mysterious expenses that conveniently never touched my father's beer or the cable sports package. I climbed the stairs, half expecting, stupidly, a welcome, a smile, maybe even a thank you. My dad opened the door, looked at me, and said it without a pause. "You're going to babysit your sister's kids. We're going on a family vacation." No hug, not even a hello. My sister appeared with a duffel bag, eyes bright with the kind of excitement reserved for people who've just outsourced responsibility. The kids were zipped into puffy coats, stamping snow into the entryway. My sister laughed, tossed over her shoulder, "Kids, don't wipe your snot on her." The living room chorus laughed on cue. My mom chimed in from the kitchen like it was a sitcom, and I was the punchline. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just laid it out. Every bill I'd paid, every time I'd covered my sister's credit card debt, every lie I told my landlord to advance money for their groceries. And then I told them the part they didn't see coming, the detail I'd been sitting on for months, the one that flipped their little script. Their resort reservation? Canceled 3 days ago. Fully refunded, onto the credit card I'd been helping with, the one in my name because my dad had stopped opening his statements years ago. My sister tried to laugh, then checked the resort's app. Her face went gray. My mom peered over her shoulder, blinking like answers might materialize if she stared hard enough. The flights? Rerouted. No refunds. I'd transferred the credits to an account under my name weeks earlier, anticipating that the family would eventually turn me into the help. My father barked the word fraud. I reminded him fraud requires the card not be mine. The upgrades, the monthly bills, the groceries, the car payment, everything had run through me for a year while he nodded and accepted credit like a man receiving medals for a race he didn't run. Then I put a folded letter on the table. Not fancy, just a bank notice. As requested, automatic mortgage payments have been suspended. No threats, no ultimatums. A tidy little "let's catch up soon." 3 weeks ago, I'd paused the auto pay to see how long it would take them to notice. Spoiler, they didn't. My sister started pacing, dialing, redialing, hoping the resort would resurrect the dead. My mom called me cruel. "After everything we've done for you." That was the line that made me laugh. The air in that house turned brittle. And then the doorbell rang. They weren't expecting anyone. I was. My dad opened the door. A tall woman in her mid-40s stepped in, badge at her collarbone, clipboard in hand. "I'm Erin with Child Protective Services." The room went silent. My sister's color drained like someone pulled a plug. 3 weeks earlier, I'd filed a quiet report, not to punish, but to document what I could no longer unsee. On a Zoom call, her kids had been left in the backyard without coats. One was crying, while my sister smoked on the porch, phone in her other hand like it was a lifeline. I took screenshots, dates, times, nothing dramatic, just facts. CPS opened a silent file, and now Erin was here for a home visit. I smiled politely. I'm the aunt, in town for the holidays. I offered the kitchen, the fridge, the nursery. I didn't need to narrate. Houses tell on their owners. The sink was stacked with dishes. Empty wine bottles lined the counter. Peanut butter smeared the dining room wall. Aaron asked to see the nursery. I stepped aside. My sister threw a switch I've seen 100 times. Suddenly, she was the devoted mother crushed by the timing. She said they were packing. She said she always left detailed instructions. She said she'd never go on vacation without ensuring her babies were safe. She said I had agreed to everything. Aaron asked if there were any messages confirming I'd be watching the kids. I handed over my phone. The most recent text from my sister was 2 days old. Can you bring that shampoo from Miami? The kind you bought me last time. Nothing about childcare, nothing about consent, just another errand. My dad tried the pivot. Elena always helps the family. This is no different. He pulled out the hymn book of excuses. Money trouble, health issues, burnout. He performed sorrow. He argued context. I pulled up 3 years of bank transfers on my app. 5-figure support, month after month after month. Aaron nodded, took notes, and went upstairs to see the children. They were in a room with a tablet and an open bag of chips, quiet in the way kids get when they've learned not to ask for more than they're likely to get. When Aaron was out of earshot, my mother turned on me. Is this what you wanted? To destroy your own family because your feelings were hurt? I looked her in the eye. It ever occur to you, I don't mind helping. I mind being used. I mind flying across the country to be told I'm a ghost with a wallet. The room deflated. They weren't prepared for me to speak plainly. I didn't come to babysit, I said. I came to let your choices meet daylight. They said nothing. For once, silence did the speaking. From the window, the snow kept falling, thick, steady, indifferent to who deserved warmth and who didn't. Aaron returned downstairs and asked a few more questions. Medication schedules, emergency contacts, school routines. My sister fumbled answers. My mom overcompensated. My dad hovered, a storm looking for land. Aaron closed her clipboard. I'll be leaving a checklist. This is a warning visit. I'll be back. She spoke calmly, professionally, like a person who's walked through hundreds of living rooms where love and neglect share a couch. I watched my sister watch the door, like maybe the right apology could pull it shut and lock the past outside. But the past has a way of living in the walls. The house smelled faintly of wine and cold toast and a tension that never learned how to name itself. I picked up my suitcase from where I'd left it by the door. No one asked me to stay. No one said, "You're right, we'll fix this." The only sound was the heater coughing to life and the scrape of my wheels as I pulled my bag toward the threshold. "Where are you going?" my father asked finally. "Exactly where I need to be," I said. "And it's not here." I stepped onto the landing and let the winter air bite my face. Below, the walkway was a quilt of footprints, people coming and going, choosing and re-choosing what kind of home they were building. Behind me, the door stayed open a moment longer, then clicked shut. And that was how the vacation ended before it began. Not with a fight, with a boundary, and a knock that arrived right on time. Aaron's checklist sat on the kitchen table like a verdict that hadn't learned how to shout. Safety latches, supervision logs, food storage, medication out of reach. Follow-up date circled in blue ink. My mother stared at it as if eye contact might erase ink. My sister pretended to read, lips moving, phone face down for once. My father hovered in the hallway, half turned toward the door, half turned toward me, unwilling to admit that both exits led to the same place, the end of how this used to work. Aaron thanked us for the time, left a card, and walked out into the falling snow. The door closed with a soft, final sound. For a breath, nobody moved. The heater clicked, a pipe ticked, the kids' cartoon music burbled faintly from upstairs as if the house itself refused to let silence win. "I'll stay 2 nights, I said evenly. "Then I'm heading to my place." My father's jaw worked once. "No, you're not staying here." I waited for the rest, the lecture, the blame, the grand proclamation about how I had brought shame to his door. But he didn't yell. He just lowered his voice until it felt like I was eavesdropping on my own banishment. "You humiliated this family. If you think you're better than us, prove it from somewhere else." My mother didn't look at me. That hurt more than I wanted it to. My sister slipped down the hallway, suddenly very busy with gathering children who hadn't been asked for their opinion about any of this. "Okay," I said. No drama, no appeal. A boundary goes both ways. I picked up my suitcase and stepped into the stairwell, the heat of the apartment giving way to the winter air that smelled like metal and clean pages. My condo didn't know me yet. The 10th floor windows held a shy view of the city, as if the skyline were trying to decide if I deserved the whole light show. The place still smelled faintly of paint and dust and something new that hadn't chosen a name. I set my suitcase in the closet, leaned against the doorframe, and listened to nothing, the kind of quiet that doesn't owe you an explanation. I texted Mateo, my boyfriend, a photo of the snow sliding off the balcony rail like icing. He called immediately. "You okay?" "I'm out," I said, "for real this time." He was quiet in that way of his that makes room without making a scene. "Proud of you," he said. "Don't let them turn your no into a negotiation." "They already tried," I said, allowing myself a small laugh. "CPS did half the talking for me." "Good," he said, then softer. "Wish I were there." "Me too," I didn't say. Mateo knows how to stand beside a storm without pretending he can stop the weather. He knows because he learned the hard way what manipulation dressed as family looks like. His ex-girlfriend once funneled gossip to my sister about me when Mateo and I first started dating. A little pipeline of poison that turned misunderstandings into certainty. We survived that because we preferred truth over theater. It taught me something my parents never did. Love without leverage can exist. After we hung up, I set my phone face down and opened the envelope I'd labeled Reclaim. Every wire, every utility payment, every month I kept the lights on in a house where I had to ask permission to enter. Dates, account numbers, notes to myself in tidy handwriting. Stop pretending this is temporary. I paged through my own paper trail and felt a strange combination of pride and grief. Sometimes the only witness you need is the version of you that refused to disappear. Morning arrived gray and early. Coffee in a mug that didn't have a chipped rim. The city hummed below. Traffic painting long lines of purpose. I put on a coat and walked 2 blocks to the mortgage lender. The woman at the desk had a warm smile and a way of asking questions that didn't make me feel like a suspect. I signed paperwork to remove my name from anything that legally tethered me to that address. I wasn't interested in punishment. I was interested in accuracy. If they wanted the house, they could hold it up themselves. If they couldn't, then the truth didn't need my body as scaffolding. Back at the condo, I opened my banking app and canceled 3 scheduled transfers. Groceries, family phone plan, my sister's car insurance. My thumb hovered for a second before I tapped confirm. The quiet after a decision is different than the quiet before it. The quiet before is dread, a wait for impact. The quiet after is an exhale that finally trusts your ribs. My phone buzzed. A long text from my mother about how family shouldn't be transactional, how love means sacrifice, how cutting people off isn't love. I let the words spool across the screen without entering me. Another text joined it, a group thread with my parents and sister. You betrayed us. We struggled to give you everything. You are punishing us for a misunderstanding. The choreography of guilt hadn't changed. They'd just switched the music to minor key. I could have replied with screenshots, with Aaron's card, with a ledger and a timeline. Instead, I took a photo of the folder labeled Reclaim and sent it to myself, an offering to the part of me that once believed proof was a bridge other people would gladly cross. Proof is not a bridge, it's a mirror. If someone refuses to look, you can't force their reflection to behave. At 7:40 p.m., my phone lit up with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. My father's voice filled the small room, colder than the glass. "If you think this is over, you're dumber than I thought. You want to embarrass this family? You'll learn what that feels like." The threat didn't even bother with metaphors. I played it twice. I didn't call back. I forwarded the voicemail to my email, dropped it in a folder named Record, and then did the most radical thing I could imagine. I made dinner. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because fear doesn't get to set the whole table anymore. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. My sister. "Can I come over alone?" 5 minutes. No fighting. "I just want to say what I should have said a long time ago. Please." I waited. Let the message sit in the air until my impulse to rescue burned off like fog. Then I sent the address. She arrived in a gray hoodie and the kind of posture you wear when you're not sure if you'll be allowed inside. I let her in. She stopped just past the doorway as if she'd wandered into a cathedral and didn't want to wake the pews. "This is nice," she said carefully, like she wanted me to know she could say something true. I poured coffee. We sat. Silence did the heavy lifting for a minute. Her hands were unadorned, no phone, no wine glass, no prop to borrow courage from. "I'm sorry," she said, and the words didn't sound like currency for once. "For the way we planned to dump the kids on you, for laughing, for making everything a crisis you were supposed to solve. I got used to you fixing things, we all did." I listened. She talked. Some of it was confession, some of it was explanation. None of it was an excuse masquerading as either. She said she'd booked a cheap hotel for the night with the kids. She said she was looking at small apartments. She said she was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. "Good," I said softly. "Get a place, build a routine, for them, for you." She nodded, eyes wet, but not performative. "I don't expect you to forgive me because I say sorry. I'll show you. Or I won't. But I'm done pretending we're one emergency away from making sense." We stood at the door. No hug, no instant absolution. Just two women who used to know each other better than this, learning how not to lie. After she left, I stood by the window and watched the streetlights comb the snow into glitter. For a moment, something inside me eased. Maybe, I thought, a new story could begin. At 11:06 p.m., my phone chimed. A new voicemail from my father. I didn't listen. Not because I'm brave, but because I'm finally careful. I took the folder labeled Reclaim from the counter and slid it into the desk drawer. Then I took out a blank envelope and wrote a single word across the front. Boundaries. Not for them. For me. I turned off the kitchen light and let the city's glow do the rest. In the reflection, I saw a woman I recognized, one who doesn't confuse endurance with love or silence with peace. Outside, the snow kept falling like a promise that didn't need my hands to hold. The next morning began with stillness, the kind that makes you question if the city outside has stopped breathing. I sat with coffee cooling in my hands, scrolling through old transfers on my banking app. Row after row of money wired into accounts that weren't mine. My name attached to bills that didn't live under my roof. A digital paper trail of a life I'd bankrolled but never belonged to. I closed the app. Enough. I'd already signed the forms to remove my name from the mortgage, but now I needed to finish the amputation. One by one, I canceled the scheduled transfers: groceries, phone plan, car insurance. With each confirmation click, it felt like a weight sliding off my shoulders, but also like a scream rising from theirs. By noon, my phone was buzzing with notifications. A group text: Dad, Mom, and my sister, all in chorus. "You betrayed us. We sacrificed everything for you. You're punishing us for a misunderstanding." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I could have replied with receipts, screenshots of payments, records of transfers, dates, signatures, proof stacked so high it could crush them if truth had the power to convince. But I didn't send anything. Instead, I saved every message. At 1:42 p.m., another ping. A photo of my father, jaw clenched, standing in the driveway, as if intimidation could travel through pixels. Beneath it, his words. "You think this is strength? It's weakness. Family doesn't turn on family." I almost laughed. Family doesn't turn on family. But what did they call flying me across the country just to dump two kids on me while they sipped cocktails in the mountains? I didn't reply. That night, the official letter arrived at their house. I knew because my sister sent me a screenshot of the header, her panic spilling into the caption, "Why?" It had begun months earlier, in the quiet aftermath of another unpaid bill and another emergency I'd been expected to fix. I filed a request with a government housing program to review how financial assistance was being used in multi-adult households with dependent children. I didn't embellish. I just provided proof. Utilities in my name, mortgage payments from my account, car insurance linked to me, while my niece and nephew were eating chips for dinner. That triggered an audit. Quiet at first, background checks, record pulls, the kind of work that doesn't make noise until it wants to. And now the letter had landed, a neat little line that cut deep. "We regret to inform you that your eligibility is subject to investigation." I pictured my mother reading it aloud in the kitchen, her hand trembling, her voice pitching between disbelief and rage. My sister pacing, muttering, calling friends who couldn't help. My father slamming his fist into the counter, blaming everyone but himself. They'd blame me, of course. I was the villain in their rewritten script. The selfish daughter, the ungrateful sister, the outsider who'd forgotten where she came from. But I hadn't forgotten. That was the problem. My boyfriend Mateo called that evening. His voice was the only calm in the noise. "You sound steady," he said, listening to the silence around me. "I've been waiting years to sound like this," I admitted. "Every dollar I gave them, I thought I was buying love. Turns out I was just renting silence." He didn't tell me I was cruel. He didn't say I should forgive them. He just breathed with me across the distance, letting my words land without trying to fix them. But after we hung up, the quiet cracked. My mind pulled me backward to a different betrayal, years earlier, when Mateo's ex-girlfriend had whispered lies to my sister. Petty things at first. That I was manipulative, that I was only with him for security, that I'd never fit into their world. My sister had fed on those rumors like they were gospel, throwing them back at me during family fights. That memory reminded me of something crucial. In my family, truth had always been negotiable. Facts bent under the weight of whatever narrative kept them comfortable. Proof only mattered when it served them. Which is why I kept my folder labeled Reclaim, tucked inside my desk drawer, alongside a new folder, Boundaries. One for what I'd endured, one for what I was building. Days passed. My phone lit up with messages, but I stopped reading after the previews. They'd shifted tactics. Less rage, more guilt. "We're drowning. We need you. How can you abandon your own blood?" But the truth was simple. I hadn't abandoned them. I'd stopped abandoning myself. On the fourth day, a knock rattled my condo door. It wasn't angry, not the hammering I half expected from my father. Just a quiet, deliberate rhythm. I opened it, bracing. It was my mother, alone. Her eyes were swollen, red not from grief, but from exhaustion. She stepped inside without waiting for permission, looked around the bare condo, then stood by the window like she needed the skyline to hold her up. "They sent the letter," she said finally. Her voice wasn't sharp. It was flat, like the words had been sanded down. "The benefits review. The car was repossessed this morning. Your father's been calling old friends for loans. No one's answering." I waited. "I came alone," she added, "because he'd only make this worse. He's angry, not because you left, but because you did it clean, quiet, without screaming, without giving him something to fight back with." She turned then, eyes wet. "So tell me, what do we do now?" Not "how dare you," not "you ruined us," just that. It was the first honest question she'd asked me in years. I set my coffee on the counter, met her gaze. "You start over. You live within your means. You stop treating people like safety nets. And if you ever want me back in your life, it'll be as a person, not a solution." For a moment, I thought she might argue, but she only nodded once, reached into her coat, and pulled out a small envelope. She placed it on the counter. Inside was a check, not for everything, not even close, but for something. "It's all we have right now," she said. "We'll send more when we can." I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I just slid the envelope aside. She lingered by the door, eyes glistening, and whispered, "Take care." Then she left. The apartment felt bigger after she was gone, like her absence took up more space than her presence ever had. I stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on, and wondered if silence could count as progress. The envelope sat on my counter for 2 days. Not large, not heavy, just a thin flap of paper with more weight than it should have carried. I didn't cash the check inside. I didn't tear it up either. I left it there like a test. Would it rot into guilt, or would it harden into proof that even my parents knew the tide had turned? The text slowed. First from my sister, then from my mom. My father never texted. Rage was a performance he preferred to deliver live, voice raised, fist pounding. But this time, even he went silent. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't a grenade rolling across the table. The quiet was terrifying. I spent my mornings stocking my condo. Plates, coffee mugs that matched, a rug that made the room feel like it belonged to me. I cooked meals too simple to photograph, but rich with one ingredient I'd never been allowed before: choice. No one asked me to share. No one criticized what I bought. No one sighed that I hadn't done enough. And still the silence pressed. On the 5th night, as snow traced lacework patterns on the window, I poured tea and thought of Mateo. He called like he always did, his voice a calm I could fold myself into. "How's it feel?" he asked. "Like a house after a fire," I admitted. "Quiet, clean, but you still smell the smoke." He didn't try to fix it. That's why I trusted him. His ex-girlfriend had once tried to twist herself into the center of his life by whispering lies about me, tales that found their way into my sister's eager ears. The memory stung, but Mateo's loyalty had outlasted the rumor. He proved that honesty doesn't need to scream to be heard. I thought about that now. How silence could be dangerous when it belonged to manipulators, but healing when it belonged to people who respected its weight. The next morning, I walked to the bank. This time, not to remove myself, but to ensure my absence was final. My name no longer appeared on their mortgage. No bills linked back to my accounts. Every cord had been cut. When I returned home, I opened my desk drawer. 2 folders, Reclaim and Boundaries. In one, all the proof of what I'd endured. In the other, nothing but blank pages waiting to be filled with rules I chose for myself. That night, my doorbell rang again. I checked the peephole, bracing for my father's shadow. It wasn't him. It was my mother, again, hands shoved into her coat sleeves, her eyes raw. She didn't ask to come in. I opened the door anyway. She didn't sit. She didn't touch anything. She stood at the window, gaze fixed on the skyline. "We got another letter," she said, voice paper thin. "The benefits are suspended. Your sister's car is gone. Your father, he's furious. He says you've destroyed us." She paused, then looked at me. "But I know the truth. You didn't destroy us. You just stopped carrying us." Her voice cracked. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying for herself. For the years, she had allowed him to script her role as peacemaker, excuse-maker, accomplice. "What do we do now?" she asked again, softer this time, like the first time hadn't really been a question. Just practice. "Start over," I told her. "Learn to live without scaffolding you didn't build. And if you want me in your life, it'll be as your daughter, not your crutch." For the first time, she didn't argue. She nodded once, reached into her pocket, and pulled out another small envelope, another check, smaller than the first. "It isn't much," she whispered, "but it's real." She set it on the counter beside the first, 2 pale slips of paper that looked like apology in its most fragile form. She didn't hug me, she didn't plead, she just said, "Take care," and walked out. I watched her go, wondering if this was the beginning of something new, or just the quiet before another storm. The days that followed stretched long. My sister went silent too, retreating into whatever temporary shelter she'd found. I pictured her kids standing in small rooms, toys scattered, no mountains, no resorts, just reality, finally. And my father? Nothing. Not a text, not a call, not even another voicemail. People like him don't apologize. They wait. They wait for the world to fold back toward them, for silence to soften, for guilt to erode resolve. But I didn't bend. The strangest thing happened one evening as I sat watching snow feather past the glass. I laughed. Not at a joke, not at a show, just at the absence of dread. For years, every time my phone buzzed with their names, my chest tightened. But now, all that silence, and I realized this was what peace sounded like. The check remained on my counter, untouched, proof not of repair, but of recognition. They knew the balance had shifted, and they knew it wasn't shifting back. January bled into February with the quiet rhythm of a life finally belonging to me. My condo began to feel lived in. Boxes disappeared, the fridge no longer echoed when I opened it, and the bed smelled faintly of lavender from the sheets I'd chosen myself. I walked barefoot across the rug and thought, this is mine, not borrowed, not funded by obligation, mine. For weeks I heard nothing. No texts, no calls, not from my father, not from my mother, not even from my sister. It was a silence that felt more like retreat than resolution, a pause where they were likely sharpening the next story they'd tell about me. I didn't chase it. Distance is its own kind of answer. Then, one morning, an email arrived. No subject line, just an attachment. A photo of 2 children, my niece and nephew, standing in front of a small apartment building. Keys dangled from my sister's hand. Their smiles were shy but real, not plastered on for a photo op. Underneath, 3 words, "Thank you, even if you hate me." I stared at the picture until my eyes blurred. I didn't reply immediately. Gratitude, even wrapped in guilt, is still a language I had forgotten how to hear. After 2 weeks, I sent back a photo from my own window, the skyline at sunset, glowing copper. I typed 4 words, No hate, just boundaries. That was all. That was enough. Weeks later, another envelope appeared in my mailbox. Same neat handwriting, no return address. Inside, a check. Smaller than the last, but steady. Accompanied by a note in my mother's hand. We're doing all we can. I didn't cash it right away. I left it with the others, stacked on my desk like markers of something halfway between apology and survival. Not forgiveness, not reunion, just effort. And effort, unlike words, is hard to fake. My father remained silent. That silence, I realized, was his final weapon. He'd never apologize, never admit he'd been carried. He'd wait for me to bend back toward him. But I wouldn't. Not anymore. Mateo visited in early spring. He walked into my condo carrying takeout and a bottle of wine, kissed my forehead, and looked around as if seeing me clearly for the first time. It feels like you, he said. Not like my family, not like debt disguised as duty, like me. We ate on the couch, laughed at nothing, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the phone to drag me back into their chaos. Mateo leaned against me, warm and steady, and I thought about how close I'd come to losing him when his ex had spread lies to my sister. The way my sister weaponized those whispers still stung. But here he was, still here, proof that truth can outlast rumor, proof that boundaries don't just protect, they preserve. One night, as snow fell lazy and soft outside my window, I brewed tea and stood in the glow of the city. A laugh bubbled out of me, light, startled, free. Not because of a joke, not because of relief, but because for once I wasn't waiting for the next catastrophe. I thought about my sister's email, my mother's envelopes, my father's silence, and I understood something. Closure doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes closure is distance. Sometimes it's knowing you can stand alone without collapsing. I touched the folders on my desk, reclaim and boundaries. One held the past, the other the future. Between them sat the checks, small but real, like stones marking the path back to honesty if they ever chose to walk it. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But I wasn't holding my breath anymore. The snow whispered against the glass, the city hummed below, and for the first time in decades, I felt the stillness of a life not borrowed, not demanded, not bargained. It was mine, and that was the twist no one in my family ever saw coming.